People think control looks like shouting or rules or locked doors. What no one talks about is how control can also look like patience, like compromise, like swallowing your instincts because you don't want to become the villain in someone else's story. That was me. My name is Daniel Brooks, and for a long time, I believed that love meant giving space, even when that space started to feel like a canyon. Lauren and I used to wake up at the same time. We used to drink coffee together, talk about nothing, laugh at things that didn't matter. Somewhere along the way, that stopped. Not all at once. Slowly. So slowly that I convinced myself it was normal. She started waking up earlier than me, or later. The timing never stayed consistent. Some mornings, I'd hear the shower running before dawn. Other days, she'd already be gone by the time I reached the kitchen. Her phone became an extension of her hand. At first, I told myself it was work. Lauren was ambitious, driven. That was something I admired about her. She hated feeling boxed in, hated the idea of depending on anyone. When we married, she promised we'd always be partners. Two strong people choosing each other, not leaning on each other. But partnerships need honesty to breathe, and ours was slowly suffocating. My days followed a strict rhythm. Office by 8, meetings stacked like bricks, deadlines, emails, the quiet pressure of responsibility. I worked hard, not because she asked me to, but because I believed stability was a form of love. Lauren's schedule, on the other hand, became unpredictable. She'd come home glowing some nights, energized, almost lighter. Other nights, she'd barely look at me, moving through the apartment like I was furniture. When I asked how her day went, her answers were polished and empty. Good. Long. Productive. Nothing you could hold on to. We stopped eating dinner together. She said she'd already eaten. Or she wasn't hungry. Or she had plans. Always plans. I noticed small changes first. Perfume I didn't recognize. Clothes that felt more deliberate. A smile that showed up on her face while staring at a screen, then vanished the moment she noticed me watching. I didn't accuse her. I didn't interrogate her. I told myself trust meant silence. But silence has a way of turning into self-betrayal. One evening, I came home early. Unexpected. I found her sitting on the couch, phone pressed close to her chest like a secret she hadn't had time to hide. She startled when she saw me. Too quick. Too sharp. "You scared me," she said. "I live here," I replied gently. She rolled her eyes. "You're acting strange lately." That word again. Strange. As if noticing the distance between us was somehow my fault. That night, lying beside her in the dark, I realized something painful. I missed her. Not the woman next to me, but the woman she used to be. The one who shared thoughts instead of guarding them. The one who didn't treat questions like accusations. I reached for her hand. She pulled away in her sleep. Or maybe she wasn't asleep at all. The next weeks blurred together. Missed lunches, late nights. A growing sharpness in her tone whenever I asked even the simplest questions. "Why do you need to know? Can I breathe without reporting to you? You're always watching me." Watching. That accusation hit harder than she realized. Because I wasn't watching her. I was waiting for her. Waiting for her to come back to the marriage we built together. But Lauren had already started rewriting the story. She spoke about independence constantly. About feeling managed. About needing room to be herself. Each conversation felt less like a discussion and more like a quiet trial, where I didn't know the charges. I started sleeping less. Thinking more. Replaying conversations in my head. Wondering where I'd misstepped. Wondering how love had turned into suspicion. Aimed at me. One night, while folding laundry, I noticed something small but unmistakable. A receipt slipped from her jacket pocket. A restaurant I didn't recognize. Two people. Late evening. I didn't confront her. I folded the receipt back into place. That was the moment I stopped reacting and started observing. Because when someone believes they're in control, they grow careless. Lauren began pushing boundaries openly, dismissing my concerns, twisting my words, painting me as the problem before I'd even spoken. "You're not my supervisor," she snapped once, eyes sharp with something that looked dangerously close to contempt. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it hurt, but because it revealed something deeper. She wasn't defending herself anymore. She was preparing an exit, and exits require villains. I realized then that whatever was happening in her life, whatever secret was pulling her away, it wasn't accidental. It was intentional, planned, emotional, and I was being slowly repositioned from husband to obstacle. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't chase answers. I did something far more dangerous. I waited, because patience, when sharpened by clarity, becomes power. And Lauren had no idea how much power I was quietly taking back. The shift didn't happen overnight. It crept in through tone, timing, and the way Lauren started treating questions like accusations. I stopped asking how her day was. She noticed, and somehow blamed me for that too. "You've been distant," she said one morning while tying her shoes, not looking at me. I almost laughed. The irony sat heavy in my chest. "I figured you wanted space," I replied calmly. She turned then, eyes sharp. "So now you're punishing me?" That was the moment I realized we weren't having conversations anymore. We were exchanging strategies. Every sentence was a move, every silence, a test. Lauren had started staying out later. Not dramatically late, just late enough to feel intentional. She'd come home with stories that didn't quite line up, meetings that ran long but produced nothing, co-workers whose names changed, details that shifted if I asked twice. I didn't confront her. I took notes, in my head. My routine stayed the same: gym early, office all day, home by evening. Consistency became my camouflage. The more predictable I was, the freer she felt to be careless. And she was getting careless. She stopped hiding the phone completely. Instead, she started daring me to notice it, leaving it face down, taking calls in the next room with the door half closed, smiling at messages she pretended not to see me notice. One night, while we were eating separately in the same room, she said casually, "Marcus thinks I should apply for that position in Chicago." Marcus. The name landed hard. I kept my face neutral. "Marcus?" She shrugged. "A colleague. He understands my potential. He actually listens." There it was, the comparison. I nodded slowly. "Sounds like he's invested." Her lips curved. Not quite a smile. "At least someone is." That sentence was designed to sting, and it did. But not the way she expected. It didn't make me angry. It made me alert. From that night on, Marcus existed in our marriage like a ghost no one acknowledged openly. Lauren brought him up just enough to remind me he was there. A subtle pressure. A reminder that I was replaceable. When I asked if she wanted to talk, really talk, she accused me of interrogating her. When I gave her space, she accused me of neglect. It was impossible to win because the game wasn't about resolution. It was about control. One evening, the tension finally snapped. She came home late, past midnight. No message, no call. I was sitting on the couch, lights low, not angry, just present. She froze when she saw me. "What is this?" she asked. "An ambush?" "I was worried," I said. She dropped her bag hard. "I can't even exist without you tracking my movements now?" "I didn't say that." "But you meant it." Her voice rose, not loud, but sharp enough to cut. She paced the room, words spilling fast, rehearsed, as if she'd been practicing this argument somewhere else. "You don't get to monitor me. You don't get to question my choices. I'm not your project." I watched her carefully, the way she avoided my eyes, the way her hands shook, not with fear, but adrenaline. "I never tried to own you," I said quietly. She laughed bitterly. "You act like you do, always checking, always watching, always expecting explanations." That accusation again. I stood slowly, keeping my voice even. I expected honesty. That was the wrong word. Her expression changed instantly, defensive, furious, offended. "So now I'm dishonest?" she snapped. "This is exactly why I can't breathe around you." She grabbed her keys. "I'm leaving." "Where?" I asked. She turned, eyes blazing. Anywhere I can be myself. The door slammed behind her, shaking the walls. I didn't follow. I didn't call. I sat back down and listened to the silence she left behind. It wasn't empty. It was loud with realization. That night something in me settled. Not sadness, not anger, certainty. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. When she came back the next morning, she acted as if nothing had happened. Made coffee, hummed, avoided conversation. The performance was impressive, but cracks were showing. Her phone buzzed constantly now. She didn't even bother stepping away anymore, just angled the screen away from me. Marcus wasn't a secret anymore. He was a statement. She wanted me to react, to explode, to beg, to become the controlling husband she was already describing to others. I refused. Instead, I started preparing. I reviewed our finances quietly, learned things she didn't know I knew, not because I was paranoid, but because clarity is protection. I met with Rachel Morgan, an old friend who worked in legal consulting. I didn't accuse Lauren of anything. I didn't dramatize. I simply asked questions. What does separation actually look like? What should someone document? How do people protect themselves without turning cruel? Rachel listened. Then she said something that stayed with me. People who rewrite reality usually slip up when they think they've already won. Lauren slipped faster than I expected. One night, she didn't come home at all. No message, no explanation. I didn't call. I went to bed early, and that's when it happened. At 2:17 in the morning, my phone lit up. Her name. Again, and again, and again. Missed calls stacking like unanswered confessions. I stared at the screen, heart steady, mind clear. For the first time, the power had shifted, and I let it ring, because whatever emergency had driven her to reach out now, it wasn't mine anymore. I didn't sleep after the phone stopped vibrating, not because I was anxious, but because my mind was finally still. Morning arrived without drama. Sunlight slid across the bedroom floor like nothing had changed. I made coffee, I showered, I went to work. From the outside, my life looked perfectly intact. By noon, my phone buzzed again. One message this time. Please call me. No explanation, no anger, no performance. I didn't reply. I had learned something important about Lauren over the years. She hated uncertainty. Silence unsettled her more than confrontation ever could. The more I gave her nothing, the more she unraveled on her own. That afternoon, I left work early and drove past a familiar address. I'd noticed it weeks ago, Marcus's place. Not because I was spying, but because patterns leave traces. Her car wasn't there. That detail mattered. I went home, poured myself a glass of water, and waited. Lauren arrived just after sunset. She looked different, not empowered, not defensive, stripped of the confidence she'd been wearing like armor. Her eyes were red, her voice quieter. "We need to talk," she said. I nodded once. "Okay." She sat across from me, hands folded tightly, like she was bracing for impact. "I made a mistake," she began. There it was. Not an apology, a revision. "I got caught up in something that felt freeing," she continued. "Someone who saw me differently." I let her speak. I wanted every word. She talked about feeling unseen, about how Marcus made her feel admired, about how she convinced herself it wasn't betrayal because it hadn't gone too far. I didn't interrupt. Finally, she said it, softly, carefully. I crossed a line. I held her gaze. "How many?" She flinched. That told me everything. The truth spilled out unevenly after that. Late nights that weren't meetings. Conversations that turned emotional long before they turned physical. Promises she made while still wearing my last name. What she didn't know was that I already understood the shape of it. Betrayal has a familiar rhythm. Once you hear it, you recognize it everywhere. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. That sentence landed hollow. I didn't plan for it to happen this way. I leaned forward, voice steady. "You planned plenty." She looked stunned, as if the idea that I'd been paying attention offended her. "I was confused," she insisted. "You were always so calm, so distant. I almost smiled. So now my restraint was the cause. I gave you trust, I said. You used it as cover. Silence stretched between us. Then she reached for my hand. I pulled back. That broke something in her. Her voice cracked. Marcus isn't who I thought he was. Of course he wasn't. She told me everything then, how he'd pressured her, how he'd grown possessive once she pulled away, how the emergency that night wasn't romantic at all. It was messy, real, frightening in the way poor choices often are, and suddenly she needed me again. I didn't know who else to call, she whispered. I believed her. But belief doesn't mean obligation. I'm done, I said quietly. She shook her head frantically. We can fix this. We can start over. I stood. You already started over. You just didn't tell me. She cried then. Real tears this time, not performative, not strategic. And for a moment, I felt the weight of everything we'd been. The years, the memories, the version of her I loved before secrecy rewrote her, but growth requires endings. I won't destroy you, I said, but I won't save you either. That night, she slept on the couch. The next morning, I began the final phase. Not out of cruelty, out of self-respect. Over the following weeks, I moved deliberately, legally, quietly. Every step measured. I didn't rush. I didn't threaten. I let facts do the work. Lauren didn't know that Marcus had reached out to me. Not directly, indirectly. Through a mutual contact who assumed I'd already been informed. Marcus had been telling a different story, one where Lauren was already leaving me, one where their future was inevitable. When confronted with the reality that I was not passive, not ignorant, and very much present, he panicked. People like Marcus thrive in shadows. Exposure drains them. He backed away fast. Lauren lost both the illusion of independence and the safety net she thought she'd built. And for the first time, she understood what it meant to stand alone. She asked me once, weeks later, was ignoring my calls your revenge? I shook my head. No, that was clarity. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was watching someone realize that the power they thought they had never existed at all. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't embarrass her publicly. I didn't seek pity. I chose myself. And in doing so, I reclaimed something far more valuable than control. I reclaimed peace. Closure doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes quietly, when the noise finally stops. Lauren moved out on a Sunday morning. No argument, no dramatic goodbye. Just boxes, measured steps, and a long pause at the door that said everything words couldn't fix. She looked back once. I never thought it would end like this. I nodded. Neither did I. But endings don't ask permission. After she left, the apartment felt unfamiliar, then peaceful. I changed nothing at first. Same routines, same mornings, same coffee. I needed to feel the difference, not distract myself from it. Friends asked questions. I kept answers simple. I didn't need to win a narrative war. Truth has a way of standing on its own. Weeks passed, then months. I rebuilt slowly. Not to prove anything, but because rebuilding was necessary. I went back to the gym regularly, not to escape, but to reconnect with discipline. I cooked again, read, slept deeply, the kind of rest that comes from alignment, not exhaustion. Lauren reached out once, just once. I hope you're okay, she wrote. I read it. I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness, but because some conversations are already finished. I learned something through all of this. Love isn't about control, and it's not about endless tolerance either. It's about mutual presence, mutual honesty, the courage to walk away when respect disappears. The strongest revenge isn't humiliation or anger. It's becoming unreachable to the version of yourself that once begged for answers. I didn't lose my marriage that night. My phone kept ringing. I found myself, and that, in the end, was the only ending that mattered.